He then gives a 1-hour lecture on how it's not the government's fault, it's Victorians' fault. It's the fault of Victorian families and individuals. But the reality on whose fault it is has been spectacularly revealed through the government's own inquiry chaired by former Judge Jennifer Coate that found that more than 99% of all cases in Victoria's second wave can be traced to the government's failure in hotel quarantine. Quarantine is the one thing that the government should have been able to get right. It's not rocket science, and no one had to invent the basis or principles from scratch. We've also heard how poorly managed and resourced contact tracing has been handled in Victoria. In one case, the contact tracing did not begin until after a patient had died, which was 4 weeks after they had actually been diagnosed. This is unacceptable. And if we want to know how badly Victoria has failed compared to the rest of the country, we need to look no further than the data, as the numbers speak for themselves. If we look at the total number of cases that have happened throughout Australia, of the 25,818 coronavirus cases diagnoses in Australia, 19,150 of them are in Victoria. The closest state to that is New South Wales with 4,050. Even if we look at the active cases today, which have come down considerably over the last few days, Victoria has 2,620 active cases out of a total of 2,829 nationwide. And what about the deaths that have occurred because of coronavirus? Tragically, 657 Australians have lost their lives. But even more tragically, 570 of those deaths have been in Victoria. Even the number of people in hospital shows a damning figures for Victoria. Of the 481 people hospitalised today with coronavirus, 453 of them are Victorians. Of the 27 in ICU, 21 of them are in Victoria. And of the 17 on ventilators, 13 of them are in Victoria. These numbers tell a damning story about the Victorian government's management of this pandemic in our state. And it is no wonder that Victorians have lost trust and confidence in this government when you see that data. But now the government's saying to Victorians, trust us. We want more power to control your lives while the government fails to be accountable itself. And as I said earlier, never before have I been contacted by so many genuinely individual constituents on a single issue. Thousands of Victorians have contacted not only my office, but the offices of every Victorian MP, pleading with us not to vote to extend Daniel Andrews and Labor's powers. Victorians have lost confidence in the government, and so have I. We all realise that restrictions cannot just end on the 14th of September, but the government should be accountable to Parliament and to Victorians on the reasons for the extension of these powers and reporting on progress regularly. The Liberal Nationals will move a number of amendments to this legislation to try and bring some accountability to the government and some sensibility to some practicality to the extensions of emergency powers. The first thing that we are calling for is that the state of emergency should only be renewed on a month-by-month basis, subject to parliamentary approval in both chambers. We will also vote to remove Clause 6 of the bill, which lowers the threshold for the Chief Health Officer to exercise state of emergency powers. We also want confirmation of the right of Parliament to meet, so that it cannot be undermined by state of emergency directions. And we would seek the removal of the proposal for the current state of emergency powers to apply even where there are no COVID-19 cases in Victoria. We also say that any amendments to renew the state of emergency powers should only be applicable to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I would encourage all of the government members and the crossbenchers to support these sensible amendments to provide certainty to Victorians and to assure accountability from this government. But ultimately, I know that a deal has been done between some of the crossbenchers and the government, and our amendments are most likely not going to get up. So in that case, I will be opposing this bill.